Coming to you from the Black Swan Media Studios, this is Fireside Chats, talking to the real difference makers in the world. Now, here is your host, John Crump.
Hey, everyone out there in TV land. This is John Crump, your friendly host for the Fireside Chats, broadcasting on not only YouTube, which you can join me at John Crump 2, our new channel, which is also on the Black Swan Media Studio channel, but you can also hit us up on Facebook at Real John Crump, or Twitch at John Crump, or Twitter at CrumpESS. We are just all over the place. And today I am joined by a guest. Turn on your light really quick for 1 second so everyone can see who you are.
Not sure if that's any good, but
that's fine. All right, that's all I needed. That right there, folks, is the one, the only, the warrior millennial, Alex Lanshe. Lanshe. Oh, getting tongue-tied tonight. Tell everyone who you are.
Yes, so yeah, the pronunciation is Lanshe. It's all right, though. I get a lot of different pronunciations.
Sorry, I got tongue-tied.
No, that's all right. And yeah, unfortunately, the screen is black as I have to be driving at this time, so that's why there's not a whole lot of light.
That is
but
fine.
I am the warrior millennial. I met you and connected to you through Cheryl Todd of Gun Freedom Radio. I was just on her program recently. We had a fantastic talk about my books and
yes, good
about
person.
the personal protection movement, and so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Cheryl Todd is one of the best people I know. Seriously. She is an awesome person. If you guys don't know who Cheryl Todd is, definitely look her up. Gun Freedom Radio, Easy Firearms, just an all-around great person. Yeah, so Alex here, I wrote a couple books. They're really good books. They are available on Amazon and all over the place. And they are called, they both have warrior in the title. The first one is what really, really interested me. What's the title of the first book?
First book is Warrior Attitude, 21 Ways to Think and Act Like a Warrior That Will Transform Your Outlook on Life.
Yeah, let's just jump right into that one, because that's one that fascinates me the most. For this book, you did a lot of interviewing, right?
Yes, the second book is Anatomy of a Warrior, the 7 virtues all warriors must live by to successfully protect and serve. And that one had over 120 interviews with people all over the protector realm that were in professional roles, mostly military, ex-military, police, even some government agencies, and it took 2.5 years to do all those interviews for the book.
Wow. So when you went around, did you travel around to them or did they come to you?
Well, actually, it was all over the phone, so no travel expenses. I got Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman to be the first interview, and he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And he connected me with about 8 or 10 other individuals, and that's how the network spider web. So from each person that I met, I would get a referral of someone else I should talk to, interview. And so it grew. I originally only had a goal of about 100. Just I thought 100 was a cool number. But I ended up doing 120 because I had so many great referrals that I didn't want to leave out of the book. So I just kept doing them. But eventually, you got to cut it off and you got to write the book and get it done. Otherwise, I'd still be doing interviews. But yeah, it was originally supposed to be 100, ended up being 120. We got everyone from Dave Grossman, Masad Ayub, Carrie Lightfoot, the Well-Armed Woman, Julie Golub, Gavin DeBecker, who wrote The Gift of Fear, all kinds of different military people and police officers. Ron McCarthy from LAPD. Who else? Tom Taylor was an executive protection agent who protected Mikhail Gorbachev and Margaret Thatcher. Like, we talked to some pretty amazing people.
Masada Ayub is really interests me. If you don't know anything about him and you want to learn about him, Google his name. He is like a god in the firearms training world, basically.
He's a legend.
Yeah.
Definitely a living legend.
Yeah, there's no one that comes close to everything that he has done. He runs a lot of classes for defensive firearms, concealed carry, and stuff like that, which is some of his stuff is amazing. He also wrote a bunch of books as well.
Yeah,
one of the questions that a lot of people ask authors is, how did you decide to write a book?
That's a great question. The first book was Warrior Attitude, and that one came about because I was trying to figure out, how to get into speaking. And the people that I was talking to about speaking said, well, if you want to get into speaking, you got to have a book. And I didn't know what to write about necessarily. Like, I'd always been in the protector background, so I'll back up a little bit. I've been in martial arts since I was 5 years old. And around the time I was a teenager, our training shifted into more reality-based training with people from the military or ex-military, like force-on-force style, scenario-based stuff, and sticking to some martial arts things. But, we expanded out into more of a reality-based realm of training that wasn't just like tournament, style martial arts. So I've been doing that since, again, I was really, really little, 5, 6 years old. And so I probably was like, well, if I'm going to write a book, it's got to be about something that I at least know a little bit about. So stuck with the protector warrior genre. And at that point, my website, alexlanshe.com, I'd already written some blogs. I was, getting my feet wet into writing by doing blogs. And I have about 75 blogs up on the website now. But at the time, first book came out in 2014. I had probably had maybe 20 or 30. And I took a bunch of old blog posts and kind of remastered them and reconfigured them into book chapters. And so in a span of 5 days from concept to publication, I had a book.
Wow.
And that's how the first one came about. And the second one was at the suggestion of a mentor. I was trying to just look for more stuff to do in the realm. And he's like, well, I said, if you want to get into this for real, it'd be nice if, like, the influencers and the people who know what they're doing knew who you were. So why don't you write a book where you gather information via interviews and make the information you gather subject matter, and it has all the benefits, side benefits of having to then speak to all these people and getting to know them and asking them about their backgrounds. And so based on that suggestion, I started the Anatomy of Warrior book and the project, and the virtue topic just came about because it seemed unique, and it cut to the heart of the real issue of the personal protection and the self-protection idea and movement. Is if we're going to have people protect people, they have to have a certain kind of character and a certain kind of virtue. And so what were those virtues? And so that was the main question that I asked all the people I interviewed, is like, if we could clone or make the perfect protector, the perfect group of bodyguards, if you will, if you had to trust them to protect your family, what kind of virtue would you want them to have? And so we talked about that, and we came up with the top 7 from all 120 people. Had some different ideas, but there were a lot of common themes, and the top 7 that everybody mentioned became the main subject and content for the book.
That is awesome. Now, one thing that I find interesting is some of these concepts, they're self-protection, but I think they can be applied to other parts of life as well.
For sure. I agree.
Yeah. So your book is not just a self-protection book.
No, that's a good point. If you're trying to do anything in life, whether it's be a good parent, a good spouse, you want to be more successful at your job, what are companies really looking for? Like, if we'll take jobs, for example. They want people that have a certain degree of virtue. They want you to be trustworthy. They want you to have a certain work ethic. And like, all of that relates back to, are you fostering virtue? So the 7, the main one that was referenced the most was like courage. fortitude. So if you're someone that is courageous and can stay the path under duress, that will make you a better employee or a better manager of employees than if you're someone who's cowardly, for example. The opposite of the virtues would be the vices. And so it'll help you in all those areas, like you said. If you're trying to have a good marriage, do you want to be a cowardly person in your marriage, or do you want to have some courage? And so it's the same thing. It applies to all areas of life. And the warrior path just stands out more because you really see it under stress. Like if someone is needing to be protected and you don't do it, it's just a clear example that stands out. Like, oh, that was an example of cowardice, or that was an example of courage. And so it's easy to see the examples, like a firefighter, for example, who runs into the burning building. It's just a real tangible way to see, that was courageous. And so it makes a lot of sense in the warrior realm, but as you said, it can go into any other realm and avenue of life.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people don't realize about books like yours is that it can go into other avenues of life. And I believe that it should. It's great for self-protection and stuff like that. They have self-protection. But with books like this, you have to look at it. What are you going to use this most for? It might be self-protection, but chances are it's going to be something else in your life. And you really should apply that to your life. For example, one of my favorite sayings, and one of the SEAL Team 6 members wrote a book about it, is the only easy day is yesterday.
Right.
And that you can apply that to more than just life. Also, I was watching a documentary on Navy SEALs, and they asked them, how do you get through it? And most of them said, you make little goals. You don't say, I'm going to get through bugs. You say, I'm going to get to lunch. Then I'm going to get to dinner.
Right.
In small, bite-sized morsels, which says that, it's you're more likely to be able to do it that way.
Yeah, eating really is a good analogy, because you can't eat the whole pizza in one bite. You have to chew. You have to take little bites. And so that's a good way to look at it. Whatever it is you're going to digest in real life, whether it's food, most of it you have to take some bites out of. You can't swallow the whole thing at one time. And that's the same for the goals. And with the Warrior Virtues from the Anatomy of a Warrior book on Amazon is the same thing. The virtues are applied every day in the little things. It's, am I going to be courageous in just waking up and getting out of bed because I'm tired and I don't want to get out of bed? It's the small little repeated acts, and that's really what leads to courage and builds you into someone of character, which has the added benefit of making you a better protector and a better warrior.
I gotcha. That is really interesting. The foreword was written by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. A lot of people out there probably don't know who he is. You want to go ahead and tell people?
Yeah, so if people don't know the Colonel, he's written some of the most iconic books in the self-protection realm. On Killing and On Combat are probably the two most well-known. On Combat deals with like the physiology of what's going to happen to the body, the psychology and physiology of what's going to happen to the human being and the body, especially in the mind, when you're in a deadly force encounter, a survival encounter, personal protection encounter, whatever you want to call it. And then On Killing was kind of a study, kind of a look into, it actually takes work to condition or to train the human being to be able to kill, because it's actually not something we want to do, most people anyway. And so you have to be trained to a certain extent to get over that, or you have to be put in some extreme real-world encounters, like, for example, a mother protecting her children. She doesn't necessarily need any training to protect her children. That's instinct. And under normal circumstances, they might think, I wouldn't be able to do it. But then if they really find themselves in an encounter where their children are threatened, they suddenly come up with some interesting ways to protect themselves. But regardless, that book was, both of them are on the Marine Corps', I think it's the required reading list. over 500,000 copies sold on Killing.
Yeah, it's
So
a bestseller.
he's been a great, and he's been such a great guy. More important than the books. Like he wanted to write the foreword. He told me when I asked him to write the foreword that it was like being asked to be the godfather of my child. And so he's just a great guy, and he's helped me out a lot in my writing and the whole process of becoming an author. And so if you haven't checked out any of his stuff, I definitely highly recommend Turtle's work. You can go to Killology, KILLOGY.com.
Killology.com. I
Yep.
love the domain name.
Any Amazon search for On Combat, On Killing, you'll pull up his books right away. So
Yeah, it's probably in every bookstore there is.
right.
Unless it's a hippie bookstore in San Francisco or something. So you also shoot, by the way, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself like the gun guy by any means, but yes, I have definitely shot and make use of the firearm as one of the many personal protection tools that are available to us.
That brings me to my next point. If anybody out there wants to join the GOA, Gun Owners of America, you can do so by going to gunowners.org/black-swan-media, and you will get 25% off, which will make your yearly due only $15. You like how I kind of segued into that?
That was good.
Yeah. It was just something I have to do because I am the Virginia director of Gun Owners of America. And Matt, that would be Dave Grossman. Yes. I know, plugs. Yeah, people are giving me a hard time about plugs. Yeah, and show the link. If you want to get his book, they're on Amazon. Just search it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Very easy.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Grossman's books are everywhere, and your books are on Amazon as well. So that was your first book. You also had a second book called The Warrior Attitude. It's another book that I really like. Tell us about that book.
Yeah, Warrior Attitude is much shorter than Anatomy of a Warrior. There were no interviews involved in that one, so like I said, it was easier to compile. But again, those were blog posts originally that were just attitudes and thoughts about the warrior life that I again originally just put on the website, and then kind of shaped them up a little bit, cleaned them up, tweaked them a little bit, and repurposed them to flow a little bit better into book chapters. But it's more of standalone chapters. So like whereas Anatomy of a Warrior will kind of build throughout as you read, because it's all the same content. It's one virtue into the next virtue as far as the chapters go. Warrior Attitude, you can start reading anywhere, and you'd be just fine. You don't have to read the chapters sequentially. They're just very short chapters to help remind you about ideas and attitudes that warriors have to help you get through the day. It's like one of the chapters is just a reminder about how warriors remember that each day could be your last day. And so it's not like a morbid, like fear of death type thing. It's just a kind of a sober reminder that you're not guaranteed any more time. And so you use that as a reminder to live well and to do your duty with honor and courage, because it might be the last time you ever have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
So just little reminders like that. So it's a good book for that. Anyone who wants like a little bit more of the mindset, that would be a good book for them.
Yeah, I have it up on the screen right now, so everyone can see it. It's available in paperback and also Kindle, which is good because I do not read anything on paper anymore. It's also available from Google Books.
Yes.
Because that's where I originally found it.
Well, and once you publish anything on Amazon, people buy it and then resell it. So you can probably find it at places I didn't even put it on.
Oh, really?
And
they really do that?
oh yeah, like the second second, especially like with my second book, Anatomy of a Warrior, the second that was published, there were already like, places on Amazon that are more like bookstores that are, have a lot of ratings and reviews and stuff. And they'd already bought it and were reselling it and saying it was new because they never opened it. So once you're an author, that happens to your book.
Yeah, that is interesting. There's no DRM or anything on that, digital rights media blocking stuff to stop that.
I mean, they bought it, so then they buy it and then resell it. So I don't think there's anything that can stop them from doing that.
That's a
I don't
big
care.
problem.
The book gets and people get to read it. So, and they had to buy it first, so that doesn't matter to me.
I gotcha. I don't know if that
All
would
my
bug me or
contact
not.
is in the book, so if people like it, they're going to come back to me anyway.
Awesome. What was the hardest thing about writing your books?
The hardest thing for anyone who's ever done writing, the hardest thing, honestly, is just the discipline of sitting down to write. Like, cause you have a lot of ideas, and trying to concentrate to get it all out coherently in a reasonable time fashion is probably just the hardest part. It's just reminding yourself that writing is a job when you're doing it. To write a book, it's not just a passion, like artistic, like I'll do it when I feel like it. Like if you really want to be good at it, make any progress with it, and when you're doing it, it is kind of like any other normal job. You have to set aside time to actually do it, and then you have to actually go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
If you just wait to feel the artist inspiration, then you oftentimes will not be writing for a while.
Yeah. And these are one of the watchers wants to know. These are not wholesalers that are reselling your books. These are actually retail buyers, right?
I'm actually not even sure. I don't pay that much attention to it, honestly. It could be both, could be either. I really don't know.
Interesting. I would like to look into that. Thanks, Matt. We call him Cowboy because Cowboy is doing some really good work for gun rights down in the south of Virginia to stop some gun grabbing people down there. That's really interesting. I'm writing a book. Hope to have it done by the spring. And you're right. It is very, very hard. You get your first 2, 3, 4 chapters done, and then you just like hit that wall. That's what I experience. Do you experience the same thing?
I have the opposite problem, actually. Once I get going, I have to know what not to include. So editing is way harder for me than writing. I can dump a ton of content, but then you look at it and you're like, well, a lot of this isn't even relevant to what I'm talking about in this chapter. You have to be able to go back and edit. But what I found for writers, it's important to not edit while you write. You need to write and get all that done, and then you go back at a totally separate time and edit. If you try to edit and write at the same time, it's so hard to make any progress. And I mean like the entire book. So when I did Anatomy of a Warrior, I wrote everything I wanted to write as far as like the intro and all the chapters and the postscript. And I wrote everything as a first draft all the way through without editing anything. And then I went back and started editing.
Not a single thing?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. Because it's too hard because then you're trying to correct things on the way, and then did that tie into something else you did in another chapter, and now your progress is much slower. So I get all the content out when I'm in the creative flow, and then I go back a different time and edit, because they're two different mindset processes. One is the writing is more creative, the editing is more analytical, and chopping things up and cutting things out. And so if you try to do them at the same time, it's kind of like going back and forth between two gears.
Now, did you edit your own book, or did you have someone to edit it for you?
I did have someone do some editing. I mean, I did editing first because I knew after the first draft I was going to be able to find a lot of stuff to tweak. But yeah, for when it was closer to actually being done with something that I was actually okay, getting close to being done with, then I did have someone else do the editing, because they caught just a lot little things, whether it's grammar or a run on here or there, like even asking like, I don't see how this relates to what you were talking about, and like some of the stuff I fixed, and other stuff I was like, no, like I'm not going to tweak that. So they didn't do it for me. I had the control, but yeah, I think if you're really trying to make the book good, it's important to have someone else. They don't have to be a professional per se, but it's definitely helpful to have someone who's good with words and grammar go through the book, because you're going to miss a ton of stuff because you're used to how you write and spell, and you have like all kinds of tendencies. Like I was missing a lot of words. Like when I start typing really fast, I'll miss a lot of like words because I hear it in my head, but it doesn't come out on the keyboard.
Yeah,
And so
same
the
thing.
editor will find that and be like, this doesn't make sense. It feels like you're missing a word. And I'm like, oh yeah, I missed you. So that's important to have an editor.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Was your editor someone you hired, or was it like a friend? Someone wants to know.
Yeah, that was a referral from one of the interviewees, actually. One of the people I interviewed had a friend who was good at it, and they recommended me. Got a decent deal on pricing and stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of editors out there, a lot of good editors out there for hire, and
yeah,
what people don't realize is it's not that incredibly expensive to hire even a pro.
no, yeah. I mean, if you want them to do 3 or 4 edits, then that's going to be more pricey. But depending on how much you want to have them do, it's really not that bad.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about getting it put in audio format?
I have. I've had a lot of people actually tell me that, and I'm gonna have to do it at some point because there's a lot of people who want it, but like they drive a lot, and so they're not really gonna read. But like if you had it on audiobook, I would totally have it. So eventually, I'm gonna have to get it on audio.
Yeah. The reason why I was asking is it seems like a big thing that people are doing now. Uh, at first, about a year ago, I was so against it. I was like, who wants to listen to an audiobook? They suck. And then uh, somebody sent me a free Audible book. I was like, yeah, let me try it. And I got hooked.
Right.
I get
Well,
the
you're out for your run or you're driving, or like it's a lot easier than carrying a paperback. Or again, if you're trying to do anything like driving, you're not going to have your Kindle up in front of your face swiping. So it definitely makes it easier for a lot of people to access. So yeah, eventually I will have to get it up as an audiobook.
yeah. Have you ever thought about, somebody wants to know, have you ever thought about using talk to text? Because they heard you say, you don't get everything out.
Right, yeah, you can do that. None of those programs that I've used are perfect. You have to speak
Slow.
a lot slower,
Yeah.
and that just doesn't work for me because I can type a lot faster than I can speak into that thing.
Yeah.
And so at the rate I'd be trying to get the ideas out, it would just take too long.
Yeah. Talking about that, even like a novice typer, someone who just goes on the internet and searches Facebook, usually they can type faster than they can talk.
Right.
And you think faster than you can type. That's why it's quicker to read something in your head than read it out loud. And one of the other techniques I use is when I go back and read it over again. I I don't know if you know or not, but I'm a writer.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I read it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those techniques, and there's also for everyone out there that wants to write something, they're worried about the grammar. There is a program out there, a website called Grammarly. It's kind of pricey. It's like $20 a month, I guess, but it does catch a lot of grammatical errors. And it also says, hey, it catches stuff like like a passive voice, which a lot of people don't catch passive voices,
Right.
but Grammarly does. Then I take it, then I put it into Word, which then that'll catch stuff the Grammarly miss. And that way, and I read it out loud, and then I send it to the editor, and then they go through it. So hopefully, through that step,
I
and
hope at that point you've caught most that needs caught.
yeah, and they're all like that. That's all they do all day is edit.
Right.
I don't know how they do it because that's the hardest part of writing is the editing, I think.
Yeah, I agree because a lot of writers are more, if they're writers, they tend to be more creative. And editing, like I said, is a totally different mode.
But yeah, the totally different animal, totally different animal, and a lot of people don't get that. Yeah, I have someone else asking, how do you convey sarcasm when you're writing? Because
Well,
it doesn't translate all the time.
I try to avoid sarcasm as best I can because it doesn't always translate well. And like you can hear it when you're writing it because you're listening to it in your head, but other people when they're reading it could be hearing it totally differently. So in general, for a book too, like because you're not going to put like a bunch of emojis in your book. So for writing, at least I'm not. So writing a book, especially of the type of stuff we're talking about, like self protection, I try my best to avoid sarcasm as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few people that can write sarcasm. Ben Shapiro happens to be one if you ever read his books. And I'm
I have
so.
not read his books.
What's that?
I have not read any of Ben Shapiro's books.
Yeah, you read his books, and just from like a standpoint of being a writer, you're like, oh, you read a chapter, and you're like, how did I know that was sarcasm? But very few writers can do that. So it is usually the person um, who is reading the book. They know the person well enough to pick up on sarcasm. I guess it is. Um, Writing. Most of these questions are coming from people, by the way. So
So
I
yeah, that's
can't
great.
take questions. Um, I have an answer for this one too. Uh, your mood. This is they were saying something else, but it brought me to this question. How do you, when you're writing your book, even if you don't feel like writing, how do you get in the spirit of writing? Like, you have to knock out some words.
Right. I mean, there's nothing fancy that I do, honestly. I mean, when I sit down to write, see, part of it is some people, because writing books has been made a lot easier than it used to be as far as like self-publishing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people try to write, but they don't necessarily know a lot about what they're writing about. They're writing books because someone told them they should write a book, and that's not wrong. But for me, I don't really have to get in the mood to write because I really really enjoy the topics that I'm writing about, and
Yeah.
they're so innate. And like I said, I've been doing the self defense, personal protection stuff since I was 5. So I have so many things to say regarding it that my problem is the opposite. Like I said, I struggle with what do I not include? How do I trim it to where it stays on like one path and train of thought because I have 8 other things I want to say at the same time. So, but as far as getting in the mood, I really don't have to psych myself up or do anything as far as like, let's get pumped up to write. Like when I tell myself I'm going to sit down and write, once I get a couple words out, I look down at the clock and it's been an hour.
Yeah. Well, I have to sometimes pump myself up to write. But being a journalist and also a writer, last year I wrote over. I for just for fun, I just saw how many words I wrote. That's not including the book I'm working on. It was like five. It was over 500,000 words. So
Yeah.
sometimes you get blank. A very famous author, his name escapes me, once said when someone asked him, "How do you write so many books?" I think it was Tolkien who actually said it. He wrote a Lord of the Rings, and he said 250 words, 250 crappy words. He said And they're like, what does that mean? Write 250 crappy words a day. If you don't feel like writing, just start writing, and eventually it will pull you into that mood.
Yeah, exactly. Doing the work is what pulls you into the mood. Um, if you wait till you're in the mood, you'll hardly ever write. You have to just do it. And the doing, it's the same. It's the same as working out. When you think about working out, unless you really love it, you're kind of like, maybe not. But once you start doing it, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm glad I did that. I got in the mood as I was doing it, and it's the same I found with writing.
Yeah. An interesting thing that I like to say is it's a really good it's a really good saying I have. People think that actions, motivation leads to actions when it's actually actions lead to motivation.
Yeah, that can definitely work that way. I think that's more of a circle personally, and motivation could lead to action, but action can also lead to
Yeah.
motivation. I don't think it's
No, but what I'm saying is like if you're not motivated, do something. Just do it
right.
anyway, and
Yep,
you'll
start
get
moving.
motivated.
I agree.
Yeah. So I mean that's what I like to do. There are a lot of people who want to write, and if anyone wants to write like a news article information, we have a website called libertyreport.co. It has some great writers over there, but one of the things I founded the site. I don't write there, but I founded it. One of the things I founded the site for is to give people a chance to write, even if it's like something small. We'll edit it for you and everything else, and put it up there and see what people think.
That's great.
Yeah. Um, any tips to that I haven't touched about on people keep on bombarding me with questions, but any tips on writing for people out there?
Just get started. If you really want to do it, um, you have to just do it. No matter how hard it is in the beginning, and there is no magic. Like the initial overcoming of like how do I go from not writing to writing, you just have to make the decision that you're going to do it, and then you actually have to take whatever implement you're using, whether it's your computer or whether you're going to handwrite it, and you have to actually just start doing it. There's no magic to that. You literally just have to start doing it, and don't worry about. The other tip for sure is, like I already said, about editing. Do not try to edit as you go. Let the ideas flow, let the stuff that needs to come out, and then go back and tweak things later. But if you write 5 sentences and then you start going back to analyze the sentences, going, does that make sense? Is that what I want to say? Like, well, at that point, you've totally killed the creative process. So let it come out, and then go back and edit later.
All right, what do you think of people who set word goals? Like, oh,
I,
I need to write 80,000 words for my book.
yeah,
And
I mean that can be all right for certain people. I didn't do that, but I know that works for some people. I don't see that as an issue, but um, I mean, you kind of have a vague goal because you're like you don't want certain books, like you don't want the book to be 500 pages most likely. So you do the math and you're like, how many words is that? And you're like, yeah. So if I'm finding myself anywhere near that territory, probably gonna need a lot of editing because people don't tend to read 500-page books anymore. But if you got that much to say, publish it.
yeah,
Who might have that much to say? So, but like I knew I didn't want Anatomy of a Warrior to be more than 200 pages. You
yeah.
know,
For a
but
nonfiction book, the goal should be between 200 and 300 pages.
right, exactly. You don't nonfiction. You don't need it to be something super massive. But yeah, as far as word goals, I didn't set an exact word goal, but it was more of a page goal. I was like, I don't. And if I can't say what I need to say in 200 pages, then I'm wasting people's time.
Yeah. When you had your first draft of your book, was it more than 200 pages and you had to cut it down, or did you end up around there?
No, it was actually kind of close. I did have to trim some stuff, but Yeah, actually, around the first try, I got it pretty close. So I was pleased.
Yeah. What is the most important lesson that you learned from talking to the people in the first book? Because that's the one I really like.
Right.
Your second one's
That's a
good.
great.
Like,
Was that a listener question? That's a good question.
no, that's mine.
Oh, well, see, look at that. You're a listener. You know, that's
Yeah.
good. Host and listener. No. So, what was the biggest lesson?
Yeah.
It was so the number one mentioned virtue was courage, and the biggest lesson out of that was how wide a range of applicability courage has. You know, because everybody told their own stories about how they used courage, what they thought courage meant, you know, why they thought it was important, and because we pulled from such a wide sample of people, I mean, we had people from all five branches of the military, either current or former, police officers of all different ranks and positions. So like some guys were SWAT, some guys weren't. We had people from government agencies, like we had a U.S. Marshal. We had a guy that wrote a lot of training programs for the FBI. We had a Texas Ranger. So like so many broad ranges of people for them to all hit on the same topic. That was the biggest lesson, and seeing how it can be applied in so many different ways. So like, you know, some of it was the courage as far as being able to tell your coworkers an unpleasant truth because the truth is going to save people, or you know, it's going to actually make a difference as far as keeping somebody safe, but that it's not going to make you popular to say it. And that was one person's example. Another, I interviewed Captain Charlie Plum, if anybody knows who that is. He wrote a book called I'm No Hero, and he was a Vietnam POW for 6 years. He was in the Hanoi Hilton for 6 years. And his example of courage was forgiveness. And he said that it took courage for him to forgive his torturers and his captors.
Wow, that's really
Right.
cool.
And so, like, all of them had various examples, and it was just amazing. The lesson was that courage is such a huge virtue, it applies to everything. And the takeaway, again, biggest lesson just being that it applies to everything. It connects to everything. And the virtue is you, it's your character. If you are courageous, you can apply it anywhere. And it was just a great thing to hear all the different stories about how they applied that in their jobs or in their personal lives. Captain Plum's being probably the most moving, if I had to pick one. Not that I'm like trying to poo-poo anybody else's story, but it stuck with me so good. It's in my talk. I do a talk on virtue. I just spoke at the Well Armed Woman National Conference out in Phoenix. That's where I met Cheryl Todd.
Yeah.
And
That's what she was telling me. She
right, and
spoke
I
very
tell,
highly of you.
oh, that's great. You know, she was fantastic. But I tell Captain Plum's story as an example of courage because it's so powerful. You know, so I put the challenge to the listeners and to everybody that I speak to. Like, we tend to hear courage and we think of like the fireman running into the burning building or the police officer, you know, shooting the charging, you know, bad guy. But Captain Plum makes you think about courage in a totally different way. It's like, who do you have to forgive? What kind of hatred are you hanging on to that you need to let go of? That takes courage. And not that shooting the bad guy doesn't, not that running into the burning building doesn't take courage, because it does. But a lot of times for us, the ordinary people, the ordinary warriors, the everyday citizens, that's more what courage is going to look like, is who do you have to forgive? And that's hard. Some people would rather shoot bad guys than forgive people they need to forgive. You know, so that's a real just example that only a POW can give you that perspective. And another one that he did, since I'll keep singing his praises because he was such a great interview. He talked about, you know, during the Vietnam, you know, you had all the anti-war movement stuff, and you know, Jane Fonda was all anti-war.
Yeah.
And he said, he said a lot of vets don't like Jane Fonda for obvious reasons. He said, but a lot of the POWs don't have a problem with Jane Fonda. He said, because we forgive Jane Fonda.
Wow, that takes a lot of
right?
that takes a lot of courage to forgive
That
someone.
does, right? Because she's
Not to get
kind
all
of
sappy,
prepped.
but it really does.
Yeah, no, it does, and it's not to diss anyone else who hasn't done it yet. It's more of a an invitation to step up in your virtue game and rise to the next level because um, it's very hard to do that. But when you see Captain Plum, you're like, and his book is called "I'm No Hero" because he doesn't see himself as a hero. He sees himself as a normal, ordinary guy who just had to do a job, and if he can do it, we can do it. So
Yeah.
that's the takeaway from him. But that's kind of a long answer. But yeah, the big takeaway to sum it up was just seeing all the different ways you can apply each virtue was fantastic.
I know you said you only had 45 minutes. So you got a chance for a couple more questions that people really are throwing out at me.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, I'll come back to that one. That one. So, yeah, okay. They wanted to know. We know how long it took. It was 2.5 years to interview everyone, right?
Yeah.
Um, how long did it take the whole entire process from? I give you two questions at one time. From start to finish, from interviewing to editing to having the book out.
Yeah,
Let's start
that
with that one.
one, like from the first interview to having it completely done and available for purchase on Amazon was over 3 years.
For 3 years.
Yeah, it was over 3 years. And again, it's such a contrast because the Warrior Attitude book. Again, I'd already been blogging, but see, that's what people. Oh, I can't write a book. I'll let the listeners all in on the secret and like the bonus material. If you've ever written anything, like if you've been, that's why it's so important just to write because you don't. It doesn't have to be one coherent book. Like Warrior Attitude is literally just 21 different short chapters of all different ideas and attitudes that you can just remind yourself of. Again, you can read any of them at any point. You don't have to start at chapter one. And so if you've written anything, you can shortcut your book process because that was literally repurposed blog posts that I just had to tweak a little bit to make them sound and feel more like a book chapter rather than like, because like some stuff would be like, there was information in the blog post that was like too specific to it being a blog post.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go back and tweak it a little bit, and all of a sudden you already have a chapter because you already wrote it. And so you don't have to take as long as you think to get the book done. The interview one took a while, but it was mostly the interviews. Like the writing itself only took me about 8 months.
Okay. This kind of goes into that. How did you find the people that you interviewed? Did you have like a set list of these are the people I want to interview? Let me call them, or did you find people that you interviewed on the way through your journey?
That's a great question.
And writing is a journey.
So
Oh,
this, oh, no, that's a good question. The secret, and this tip here is probably worth more than anything I've said so far, because I didn't know basically any of these people before I interviewed them. I did know Dave Grossman because I'd seen him at several seminars, and I actually like didn't just see him and not say anything. We'd actually spoken multiple times. Like he was starting to recognize me. I'd been to like 4 or 5 of his events, and so he knew me. He didn't know much about me though. But at the end of the interview, I was taught a question by one of my mentors that if you want to get more, connections, you ask people who you know that I should know.
that's a good tip.
And so at the end of the interview with Dave Grossman, that's all I asked him. And he connected me with about 10 other people. And so after that, each one of those 10 was who do you know that I should know? And so now every now and then some person would be like, I don't really have anything for you as far as contacts, or like, let me see if they're okay sending you the info. Then they never got back to me about it, or they said, hey, they don't really want to be a part of it. But that was rare. Almost every single person had at least one other contact. They were like right off the top of their head, like, oh yeah, you should talk to so and so. I'll set it up. And so that's how I got to all the people. It was, and then there was no barrier because I was always being referred by someone they already knew, liked, and trusted. And most of it was Grossman. Like once people found out he was involved and he was writing the forward, everyone was like, well, if he's, he doesn't get involved in stupid stuff. So if he's doing it, must be good. And they would sit down with me and like, I don't know if people know Gavin DeBecker, but he wrote The Gift of Fear, which
good book.
It sold, tons of copies.
Yeah, it's a bestseller. I think it's a New York Times bestseller, I believe, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was New York Times, but it sold a lot. And he was on Oprah to promote it, so like big time stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm not sure.
Right? Yeah, I don't
Sure,
remember exactly. Sure. I don't want to say it wrong, but like huge private security firm, one of the biggest private security firms in the world. He's a super busy guy, and like he volunteered to write the afterword because he knew Dave Grossman. He knew Grossman doesn't get involved in stupid stuff, and like he wrote a great afterword. And so I got two of the biggest authors in our space, in the self-protection space, to bookend, the book with a forward and an afterword. And I had never met Gavin before. I still have never actually met him. We only talked on the phone. So I've never seen him in person, and he wrote the afterword because of the connections. And so you always ask people, who do you know that I should know? And that's not for writing a book. That's for, like you said, for anything. If you want to get into any industry, into any space, you find the person you have the quickest access to. And so for me, it was Grossman because I paid to go to one of his events again. So I knew I was going to see him. And at the event, I gave him a copy of my Warrior Attitude book and said, hey, I'm writing another book. Can I interview you? And he said, sure. And that's how you get in. And then once you have one person, you just ask them, who do you know that I should know? And if you've been a halfway decent person, they should refer you to somebody, and you keep that process going.
Yeah, if you're a jackass, maybe you don't want to ask that. But
if you screw up the first contact by being a jerk, then you're probably not going to get anything. But as long as you've been respectful and treated them good, then you should get some referrals. And that's how you do it. That's how I got to all the people. Like, again, Masad Ayub and people that were in, I even got to some people that are in branches of like special forces where I couldn't even publish their name in the book, but they still wanted to contribute to the project. You don't get to people like that unless you're getting referred because you can't even find some of those guys because they don't have Facebook pages and they don't sell anything.
Yeah.
So that was what's great about the book. Is like half the people were somewhat prominent, like Grossman's very public, Gavin's very public. But then the other half of the people were just regular protectors doing their jobs who don't have books, don't have websites. They're not people you're ever going to hear from, but they do a damn good job.
One of the things about those guys that always blows my mind is you can be right next to them in the store and look at a guy and be like, he probably works an office job. And he's like a stone cold killer,
Right. Yeah. One of the guys from Special Forces was like that. If you saw him, you're like, but and if you know who he is, you're like, oh crap.
Yeah, I have a very, very close friend that's Special Forces, and when you go out with him, it's it's like, okay, he was like a IT guy or something like that. But
right.
It's like, oh well, he was a he was a sniper for 10th Group Special Forces, so not exactly IT. He shot terrorists in Iraq. Did the I have two more questions for you. Then I know you have to get going, but there's so many questions in the chat right now. People have a lot of questions about how the whole process worked and stuff like that. Did you give the interviewees copies of your book, or did you make them buy it?
I did not give everybody a copy. No, not 120 people. But
that would be kind of expensive.
I mean, they all had access to it though. Like when I was writing it, they all had the opportunity to peek into the writing process and see it while I was writing it.
I think they mean the finished product.
Yeah, no. I didn't give everybody a finished book, but they all got a chance to read it if they wanted to. I mean, some of them were too busy; they weren't going to have the time. But they all had an opportunity to see it while I was working on it, and when it was finished through shared documents. But no, and everybody did not get personal copy.
Awesome. Oh, one question that I have. How did you how did you realize you were finished with it? That's an issue a lot of people ask me about. How do you know when you get finished writing?
Right. Well, for me, for Anatomy of a Warrior, I picked the top 7 virtues that were the most referenced, and so I knew that was the kind of the barometer. That was the content. And so when I got to the last virtue, that was kind of the signal. It's like, all right, you're done. But as far as like how much content you put in it, that's always an issue for writers because they have so much to say, so what do you leave in? What do you take out? Like it is hard, but um, you just have to like some of that. I do think it's important to set some hard deadlines on. Like I have to have it completed by X date because otherwise it does just tend to float into the nether world of I'm always working on it. And then it's been 10 years and you've never published it, you know.
Yeah.
So once you actually get the writing going, I think it is important to set deadlines. Again, not necessarily like a word count per day, because like some days you might write more, some days a little less. But in general, you want to have those ideas mapped out because otherwise, yeah, you do run the risk of you can always make more tweaks. You can always add more or make one more edit or throw in a little bit more here and there. And so you do have to just be like, all right, done now. Time to put it out there so people can read it. A good reminder is just like, why are you writing it? Like, if you want anyone to read it, it's got to get published, or else no one can see it. So you got to eventually remember the people out there that you want to have read it and be like, for their sake, I have to be done. I've got to get it out to them. So, and that takes the mind off your own ego and your own perfectionism, and you're like, wait, but this is good enough as it is, and people can benefit from this. So it needs to be out there so they can see it.
Yeah, I always say the hardest part of writing is the beginning and ending. Everything else in the middle is cake.
Right. Yep, I agree. Starting is hard, and I think ending's harder.
Ending is definitely harder.
Yeah, right. I agree.
So you get to the end and you know you want to end it, but you have no idea how.
Right.
But once you get those two down, then it becomes a lot easier. All right, final question, and everyone wants to say thank you for taking the time to let us look into a mind of a successful author out there.
Yeah, I hope that was helpful for people. It was a lot of like technical writing type stuff. I hope everybody enjoyed that.
Yeah, they actually did. I wanted to originally I was gonna dig into the stuff in the books, but everyone seems to have on the YouTube chat. We're on multiple YouTube channels, the Twitch, Periscope, Facebooks, and everything.
Right.
They seem to want to know about the more writing aspect of it. So give the people what they
great.
want.
Right.
And the final question is: do you have any other books coming out or anything coming up?
That is a good question. I only have ideas right now for a third one. I know for sure that I want to do another one. I don't know exactly what about yet, though. I mean, it'll still be in the warrior self-protection genre, but I'm trying to find something that is unique enough. It hasn't been rehashed 1,000 times, and that is still, based on timeless truths that are just true. And so I'm trying to come up with a good medium between telling old truths in a new way that is still unique and not rehashed so much that everyone's like, yeah, cliche, I already heard that, So it'll have some virtue stuff in it, maybe a little bit of a deeper dive into how do you apply them. Maybe more. The thing is, I have so much material, like all those interviews I did, those 120 interviews, they're all recorded. Like there's so many stories that I was told from all those people. Like I could do a whole book on just the stories. Like there wouldn't even be any point other than the only theme would be like stories from different warriors and protectors, and the title would be much more creative than that. But then I can literally just tell all these different stories because I have all that stuff recorded. We talked about deadly force encounters when I interviewed him. So like I can do a whole book on that, just on what all these different people said about surviving deadly force encounters. So who knows? But I definitely want to write another book. I really enjoy writing and publishing. It's a lot of fun. And there's a lot more that I would like people to be able to get. So definitely working on one, but I don't have a set answer yet on exactly what it's going to be about.
All right. I want to really thank you for being on Fireside Chats with me. You are Alex Lanshe. Your website is Alex Lanshe, A-L-E. What am I talking? It's on the screen, people. You can read.
For anyone just listening, AlexLanshe.com.
Yeah, I guess.
And books are all on Amazon. It's Anatomy of a Warrior. That'll be the first book that comes up for that one. And then Warrior Attitude, also on Amazon. If you want to follow me on social media, Facebook is Anatomy of a Warrior. Just search Anatomy of a Warrior. The heart and the shield is the logo for the Anatomy of a Warrior book. So it's a anatomically correct human heart inside of like an arrowhead-shaped shield. So if you see that logo, that's me. And Instagram is Warrior Millennial. And those are I'm not on Twitter, but Instagram and Facebook are the two primary social medias for following me.
Twitter is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I never even figured out what Twitter was for. So I missed that boat. So I'm like, I'm not going to even bother at this point. But yeah, Instagram, Warrior Millennial, Facebook, Anatomy of a Warrior.
All right, people. That is it for this week. A couple days early, but it's a holiday weekend, so I have stuff to do. And I'm sure you guys do too. Yep, you're going to have some new followers. There's a guy named Cowboy. If he follows you, just ban him.
Instant ban.
No,
thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. And again, I hope everybody got some good value out of a little bit of a deeper dive into the writing process.
Yeah. One thing with my podcast, I don't know where they're going to go.
That's all right. It's raw and live, and that's cool.
It's raw and live. I have a general idea, but it goes to wherever people start asking about. My audience helps me develop the podcast, I guess you could say. All right, guys. That's it for this week. I'll be back next Saturday with a brand new guest. Stay tuned to find out who it is.
This was Fireside.
Oh, and I forgot to make one last plug, guys. Then I'll play the outro. BlackSwanTactical.com for all t-shirts and gadgets.
This was Fireside Chats on Black Swan Media. Look for new episodes every Wednesday for real conversations with people making an impact on the world. Please visit Liberty.